Yeah, so you spoke a lot about the Bill of Rights and adhering to the Constitution. How do we take, and I completely agree with that, how do we take that to all of the American people and get people behind that? Because it seems like a lot of people aren't behind that.
You know, I think particularly with privacy, it does cut across party lines. So I have allies in Washington that worked with me against this program. I also have allies on a series of privacy, like Ron Wyden is a progressive Democrat from Oregon. He and I work together on quite a few of these things. On criminal justice, civil asset forfeiture, not putting kids in solitary confinement in our jails, things like that. We have people on both sides. But I also think it's a secret weapon. You know, my hope is we probably don't get everybody here, but you know, if we get a significant percentage here, it can be the dominant force on campus at Iowa State. You know, all of a sudden we do have great power. You could have great power. You have enough power, if there's a big enough group of you that get involved and help us, that you can make the difference in the Iowa caucus. The person who wins the Iowa caucus or places high has this great steamroller effect of moving on. But I truly think these issues cut across party lines. Privacy, Fourth Amendment, criminal justice, having a less aggressive foreign policy, one that has a strong defense, we defend our country, but that we're not eager for war and we understand the unintended consequences of war, that the war on drugs has had crazy effects, and that we shouldn't be putting people in jail for decades for nonviolent drug crimes. I think all of those things you could hear from people on both sides, and then you combine that with someone who believes that we ought to balance the budget so we don't completely bankrupt the country. I think there is the ability to get people on both sides to come together on that. And everywhere I go, I'm meeting people who are coming, that were Democrats or thought they were Democrats or were independents. Right now, if you see our polling against Hillary Clinton, we beat her with independents, and we're beating her with the youth as well.
Got a question over here.
So the question I have is something that affects a lot of the people in this room is student loans, which is a big problem in the United States. If you're elected president, what are you going to do to help fix this problem?
A couple of things. The simple answer, and what I can do immediately, I think, to help, and what we ought to do, is to make your loans entirely deductible when you start working. Right now, you can deduct some of the interest, but not the principal. I figure everything you spend is a business expense. You're spending on an education for a future job. Why wouldn't we let you deduct the entire principal and the interest? Now, this is different than just giving the money. Bernie and Hillary and Obama, they'll give you it. They just want to say college is free. The problem with free is nothing's really free. That means someone else is paying for it. They just haven't told you who's paying for it. But deductibility against your income, I don't think is unreasonable. The rules have to be changed so you can do it over your working career. Because let's say you get out of college and you're only making $35,000 a year, you don't make enough money to deduct your $150,000 in loans. Not particularly in a year, it would take a while. So you have to let people do it over their whole working career. The other thing you have to ask yourself, though, is why is college so expensive? There are two things, two large areas of your life where government subsidizes the demand for something, but then controls the supply. If your supply is constant and you're increasing the demand for something, prices have to rise. So in healthcare and education, there's a huge government stimulus to demand, then there's government controls on how much the supply is. One of the innovations that I would like to see in colleges is, y'all have online courses you can do? Do they cost just as much as going to the class? That doesn't make any sense at all. See, the thing is if you have online and you use the internet, there's a couple things that should happen. Oh, another question I wanted to ask. You ever had somebody teach a course that you couldn't understand them? So here's the thing, why would you take any courses and pay the same rate online from somebody who really isn't doing a good enough job explaining the subject? There are probably people, imagine this, there's the best NFL quarterback in the country. Don't you think there's the best person at teaching calculus in the country? Why wouldn't they teach everybody? Why wouldn't you go, when you go to a calculus lecture, instead of listening to somebody who may or may not be good at explaining it, or it may be their second language or third language, why not listen to the best person in the world? And then you'd have a local teacher sort of helping and testing and going through it. But I think you would have extraordinary teachers. And what would happen is if it weren't overly regulated, the price per class should go down. But see, the schools and the accreditation and the universities, they all control this. And so when you do an online course, it's ridiculous that it doesn't cost them less. It costs them a lot less. But you're still paying exactly the same. So we need some kind of innovation in education as well. And I think some of the innovation would be connecting you to the extraordinary teachers around the globe. Could be that somebody's in Madagascar and wants to learn physics, but there may not be a teacher there, but they may be able to learn in Boston. Over time, we're going to connect and find genius around the world, and I think it's amazing what the upside is, but we've got to connect people to the internet.
Got another question over here.
The Republican Party isn't exactly known for reaching out to minorities and young people. How do we get the Republican Party to follow your lead with organizations like Students for RAND to reach out to those minorities and young people?
I think part of the answer is it's a couple-fold. I'm extremely excited about the possibilities. I've been to the south side of Chicago. I was there about a month ago. There was an African-American minister there who has a private school who's changed his registration to be Republican. Why? Because he says, one, graft at City Hall steals most of the money, never gets to his neighborhood. The Chicago machine steals it. If you're related to somebody down there, you can get a job. Reminds me of a story I heard from a fireman one time, and I'm not sure, it probably doesn't work as it anymore. But he said, yeah, back when I was a fireman back in the 60s, he said, you didn't go to City Hall to apply. You went to the cafe across there, and you had to have a brown bag with $1,000 cash, and you met with the mafia. And that's how you got your job, was from the mafia don across from City Hall. It may not be quite that bad anymore. But I will tell you that people who live in poverty are noticing that Democrats offer them all this kind of stuff, and we're going to give you all this hope and change, and then nothing ever shows up in their communities. So I do have a plan for the inner cities in our country. I would lower the taxes so much they'd be like islands where people would want to move to. And so, like, let's say you live next to one of these poor areas in Chicago and your income tax was 25%. What if I tell you it's 5% if you move into this area? So is your business tax. Maybe you'll move your business into that area. What if we lower the Social Security tax, and if you work at McDonald's in there, you pay a lower tax, and your employer pays a lower tax? There's all kinds of ways you could encourage incentives, but Republicans have to show up. We don't go to the African American community, but you know what? Who else doesn't go? Neither do the Democrats. The African American vote is so taken for granted, the Democrats don't show up because they just expect everyone to vote Democrat. Republicans don't show up because they haven't for 40 or 50 years and they just gave up. I tell people there's only upside potential for us. Let's show up. Let's say what we're for. We don't have to make up new stuff. We don't have to be dishonest. Let's say exactly what we're for, but how it will work better than the Democrat policies. I think we can win a lot of votes. I think there are people that are open and are tired of being taken for granted.
Take one more.
Right here in front.
The United States has been involved in wars overseas since before I was even born, and I want to know what you are going to do to promote peace for the United States.
Part of the way we try to make war less of an inevitability is that if you follow the Constitution, it's not easy to go to war. If you let one person in the White House decide when you go to war, you're going to go to war more often. And that's why all of our founding fathers said that's specifically why they took the power for the presidency and gave it to the legislature. You've seen how messy Congress is and how it looks like we never get anything done. Sometimes that's good. And if you were talking about going to a war that may not be the best thing for the country, I think you might have less of a chance of getting a vote. It's sort of what's tying up right now some of the ability for people to vote to go back to the Middle East, because frankly we've been there for 15 years. The Sunnis and the Shiites have been killing each other for a couple thousand years over there. And it's so messy that sometimes we're not even sure which side we're on. So for example, the next question they're going to ask, and I promise you that people promoting this is, we need to be in Yemen. All right? Yemen's really confusing. I'll bet you most people don't even know who the sides are in Yemen. Saudi Arabia is on the side of people who are similar to or somewhat supportive of Al-Qaeda. The Houthi rebels are backed by Iran. So many in Congress are saying, we have to counter Iran in Yemen. Well, to do so, we'd be on the side of Al-Qaeda. Iran's trying to kill Al-Qaeda. I'm like, let's buy popcorn. You know? But we need to know that it doesn't always work. And it's kind of funny, but it's not funny if it's your brother or your sister being sent to Yemen over something that is a 1,000-year-old battle, that there is no easy answer to what we do over there. So part of it is we have to obey the Constitution so we don't easily go. But then part of it is, can we find a new coalition? See, in Washington, I'm a very lonely voice in not wanting to go back over to the Middle East. The vast majority of Republicans want to go. The vast majority of Democrats want to go. There are very few people who will vote not to go back into the Middle East. But we have to ask whether it worked. When we toppled Saddam Hussein, is the Middle East now more stable or less stable? More chaotic, less chaotic? Are we safer or more at risk from terrorism? See, with Saddam Hussein there, most likely he would have still been the old dictator self, and probably radical Islam would still have a tough time. So under Gaddafi, the same way. Doesn't make Hussein good, doesn't mean we should supply them with weapons, but there was somewhat of a standoff. Hussein was also a counterbalance to Iran. Iran's been in the news. We want to make sure Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons. I agree. But if you want to make Iran weaker, more counterbalanced, why would you take out the person right next to them that was their enemy? So this is the kind of thing we've been doing over and over and over again. And I think it's time we have a different kind of candidate, someone who will stand up and say war is not always the answer. Woo! Thanks, everybody.